When Bella Swan arrived in Forks, the sky was covered by a thick gray blanket of clouds, as if the sun refused to witness what was about to begin. Charlie hugged her awkwardly, as always, and handed her the keys to the old truck. To everyone else, she was just another girl returning to the rainiest town in the country. But to Edward Cullen, she was something else. Another possibility. Another perfect piece on the board he had been patiently assembling for years. From his secluded corner in the school cafeteria, Edward had already seen her before she noticed him. It wasn't her scent, though that too. It wasn't her shyness, nor her melancholic gaze, not even the way she bit her lip when she felt out of place. It was her mind, or rather, her silence. While the thoughts of others drilled into him daily like a swarm of hysterical bees, Bella was an absence, a void, and that fascinated him more than any physical beauty. He had hunted her the moment he couldn't read her. Edward smiled to himself. He loved challenges. For weeks he pretended distance, pretended inner struggle, pretended he resisted her. And she, like so many before her, fell into the trap of his mystery. He was an expert at that, portraying himself as tortured, brilliant, cold, yet curious. He dropped crumbs of attention, like someone leading prey into a burrow. He knew exactly how long to look, when to pull away, when to save her, when to seem unattainable. When he stopped Tyler's van with impossible strength, Bella could barely understand what was happening. For Edward, it confirmed that his bait was perfectly placed. The Cullen family watched from afar. Carlyle believed him tormented by his nature, yes, but also redeemed. Edward had earned his trust through years of obedience and self-control. No one suspected a thing, not even Alice, whose visions became blurry whenever Bella was involved. Jasper avoided delving into the emotions he felt around him. It was as if something darker slid beneath the surface, something even his own kind didn't want to see. Bella, meanwhile, was falling without a net. Edward began visiting her at night, silent, invisible. He watched her sleep, recorded every word she said in her dreams, every movement of her breathing. Not out of love, though he claimed to love her. Not out of desire, though he touched her with rehearsed tenderness. He did it because he wanted to understand how she worked inside, because he wanted to know how long it would take for her to break, because she was his. He told her half-truths, that he was a vampire, that he fought his instincts, that she was special. Bella, infatuated, believed everything. She gave herself over with the innocence of someone who believes she's loved. He returned that surrender with perfect smiles and measured caresses. He hadn't bitten her yet, not because he couldn't, but because he didn't want to. Edward didn't just want her blood. He wanted something more lasting. He wanted to turn her into a shadow of herself, into someone who could only exist if he allowed it. But then something happened that Edward hadn't anticipated. Bella began to see, small details at first, the unexplained absences, the vacant stares when she thought he was protecting her, the feeling that sometimes her fear wasn't of the world surrounding Edward, but of Edward himself. One night, when she woke up startled by a nightmare, she found him in her room, as always. But this time, his eyes weren't gold, but black as ink, and there was no tenderness in his face, only restrained hunger. "How much do you really know about me?" he asked, his voice softer than velvet. Bella didn't answer, but something inside her broke, and for the first time since she met him, she felt like running. The game had changed, and Edward, for the first time in decades, felt something very close to impatience. The night thickened like tar as Bella, her heart pounding at an unnatural rhythm, too fast even for fear, pretended to fall back asleep. She felt Edward's eyes on her, analyzing her, like a soulless doctor dissecting emotions. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe naturally, because it was no longer just suspicion, it was certainty. Edward didn't love her, not the way she had believed. And if he ever did, nothing of that feeling remained beneath the perfect mask. The next morning, she vanished. Drove the old truck to Jacob Black's house without explaining to Charlie. She couldn't. She didn't even know how to put into words what she felt. The humiliation of having been manipulated, the revulsion at remembering every watched night, every whisper disguised as tenderness. Jake welcomed her without questions. One look was enough to know something was very wrong. And while he didn't know everything, he knew enough. But Edward wasn't long in coming. Rain began to fall as his figure appeared at the edge of the forest, immaculate as always, with that serene expression that no longer fooled Bella. The only thing disturbing his face was the loss of control, and that, for him, was intolerable. "I came for you," he said, almost disappointed. Jacob stepped in without hesitation, and for a moment the air trembled like before a storm. Edward didn't attack, not yet, because Bella was still watching, and Edward needed her to believe she could forgive him, that she could still choose to stay. "You're not who you say you are," Bella said. Her voice trembled, but didn't break. "I don't want to go back with you. I don't want to see you again." And then Edward smiled, not with sadness, not in defeat. He smiled like a player who had lost a match, but already planned the next. "It doesn't matter if you don't want to, because you're already mine." And with a flash of his eyes, he vanished into the trees. For days, weeks, the threat hung like a sword above their heads. The Cullens were divided. Esme and Carlisle refused to believe Edward could have manipulated Bella, but Jasper, who had begun to feel her anxiety even miles away, could no longer ignore the truth. Alice, in fragmented visions, confirmed what they feared. Edward was drifting toward darkness, not just to possess Bella. He was creating something, a plan, an army, a twisted version of what he believed love was. Bella lived hidden in La Push. She didn't eat well, didn't sleep, but she no longer cried, because something inside her had hardened, like bone strengthened after a fracture. She couldn't be the same Bella, that Bella no longer existed. And then it happened. On a moonless night, the dogs howled before any human heard footsteps. Edward had returned, but he wasn't alone. Behind him, silent, walked others. Red eyes, empty smiles. He had recruited young clanless vampires, broken creatures, and convinced them that what he offered was purpose. A cause, to protect what was his, to reclaim Bella. But Bella was no longer a girl who needed saving. With the help of the Quileute and Jasper himself, who left the family for the first time to protect her unconditionally, the ambush was repelled. Edward didn't fall. He simply vanished into the mist, as if he knew the time wasn't right yet. The war hadn't ended. It had only begun. Bella now lived in Alaska, under a new identity, far from Forks, far from the past. She bore a small scar on her shoulder, a memory of the last time she faced him. Sometimes Alice visited her, told her the visions were blurry, the future constantly shifting, but it always ended the same. "It doesn't matter what Edward does," Bella would say, voice low, like a vow. "He no longer has power over me." And then she'd look to the horizon, waiting for the day the hunter returned and found the prey was no longer running, but ready to face him.